So those are some about applying verses, just using scripture. Now moving on, we're going to talk about prayer here too. Now, there's a lot of thoughts about, and a lot of conversation about praying with your clients. So to pray or not to pray? That is the question. So praying during or outside of sessions, of course, highly encouraged, highly supported. We want to make sure that as Christian counselors, we're recognizing that we're not the ones who are going to be the fixers, that God's the one who's bringing the healing, that all healing comes in and through Christ. We are the ones who are working with the client. And we get to have this honor and this privilege too. Now there's some thoughts about when prayer is not helpful. So real quickly, just two little thoughts about this. Prayer could not be helpful possibly if the client is using it to escape or to distract or to worry. So a lot of times we can worry our prayers instead of actually talking with God about it. Philippians 4 is a really great outline of how not to worry your prayers and allow yourself to connect to the person in the presence of God. And then the other things of thinking about this is if a client's using this as a way to distract or a way to come away from or escape from an emotion or an experience that God's leading them into. Because a lot of times in prayer, all we're doing is reciting stuff, or in prayer, we're thinking about things that we think we should be saying. So when prayer is not helpful, could be one of those times. So that could be some things to just think through and explore with the client. What is prayer for you? When is it helpful? And modeling prayer is a really great tool as well. So if your client wants to do prayer in sessions or wants you to pray with them in sessions, this is a great tool that you can use for modeling how to actually use prayer as a communication skill with God, because it is all about relationship. The other thing about prayer is thinking about prayer is a place of authority. And as believers, all of us in this room as believers all have the identity of Christ in us. We are all made in the image of God. And we all have the authority given to us by God to come in prayer with others and to break what we might say are strongholds, or to come into places where we say, we're not going to be doing this or allowing this any longer. And in prayer, we're going to agree together, and in prayer, we're going to move forward in a new way together. So prayer has a lot of different places, of course, in this. Another creative kind of place to look at is music. Now music, there's 3 different types of music that typically I've used in different sessions. Worship music, praise music, and then playlists. So with worship music is that place where we get to come to that handout that we talked about before, about God image, Father image, and we can talk about, what did you hear in the worship songs at church? When you listen to Caleb or you listen to other Christian music, what are you hearing? What are you picturing? How are you feeling about God? So worship is a good way music is a good way to bring that in. Praise music is another thing too. You can bring praise music in and play a praise song that the client selects after you do resolving fear, and allow the brain to go to that place because God is asking him to go to that place of gratitude and thankfulness. Playlist is another possible way to utilize some music. Oftentimes, a lot of my clients will come in with playlists, and we'll walk through, instead of using English words, we will walk through music together as a session. And we will talk about, what is this song? And I'll invite them before the session, create your playlist as if you want to tell me a story. So they'll come in with a playlist of 5 to 10 songs, and we'll walk through them together. And when we'll interact together, we'll pause the songs, we'll rewind, we'll fast forward. If they have a music video that was important to them, then we'll look at that together. So music can be a place where it's not just a connecting place, but it's an empowering place for the client, because that's how they're made in Christ, to be able to connect with God. So that's a great way that we can pull that out, support them, and empower them as well in that. The next one is the spoken word. The spoken word has become something that it's a power-packed thing. I feel like the spoken word, above a lot of these other things, has a lot of empowerment within it, because it teaches restoration and retrospection. It's an act, really, of reclamation for a way for the client. It fosters some active listening because we're having to pay attention, and it also shows that we're not alone. So I want to show you two portions of two quick videos. This first one is from the artist Propaganda. Let's see if it's going to come through.
Engage a page, turn and burn a stage, the fragrance raises similar to native sages, sage and unlocking a cage of praises for rock of ages. Let random rambling rappers rant and raving. Inflame birds to your nerve endings, literally feeling these words in my tendons and rattling occupants of the venue sinews. While the eulogy be orchestrating continuous Christian news. Excellent, been down since Exodus. Like what if the Egyptians and Israelites joined forces? That would force a forfeit, it's hard to drive hard when your hard drive keeps digging a pause quick.
So that's Propaganda. You can see a lot could be done with that and thinking through interactions with your clients. Here's a different kind of impression of the spoken word from Kina.
Sing it to me again. The song you sing without shouts and glee. A melody overflowing with your love for me. I must hear it again while you hold me close to your chest. I can see near the sides of your eyes gleaming creases, revealing a permanent smile. While I'm wrapped in garments you gave me, say.
Beloved, these are the songs I give to my king. Sustainable, spotless, clean, perfectly pleasing. I see you like this, my firstborn. You labored to make these with his own hands. So come close, child. I tell you how it happened, just as I planned. Just as I planned.
Just as you planned?
Yeah.
So those are some examples of the spoken word and how the spoken word can be a part of actually allowing your client to put things together, but also to bring things that they're hearing and seeing. So one of the things that some Christian counselors have said that they don't want to bring culture into their counseling session. Bring it. So culture is a way where you can bring the music, you can bring the things that we're hearing, that we're seeing, bring it into the sessions and allow it to be a part of actually that reclamation. Okay, so office supplies. So these three ideas came when I was a grad student and I had zero money to buy any kind of fun things for counseling sessions. So name tags. Name tags. Have any of y'all ever used name tags to allow your client to write a label on themselves and then to allow them to pull it off?
Oh, wow.
So give them a stack of name tags. Ask them, what are the current labels that you feel like you're in right now? This could work for anyone who has had the B traumas, like the sin done to them, or people who are in a place like I work with a lot of artists and also a lot of corporate women who are just feeling completely overwhelmed and they're manufacturing energy for lots of different roles. So what are those roles? What are those labels? Which ones do you want to adopt? Which ones do you want to move? So there's some places of allowing them to see things in different ways. Sticky notes is another one, and it can be kind of similar to that, where you can use adjectives. Let's say there's lots of adjectives that people have had spoken over them. Or let's say there's lots of adjectives they've used to describe themselves in the past, but maybe now they're wanting to look at life a different way. So this is another thing. You can give that power to writing them, putting them on, and then taking them off. One client I had, we had to use a blanket because she used almost a full stack of the office supply sticky notes, and we just covered her, and then she was like, I'm free, and she dropped the blanket and the sticky notes came off, and then she wanted to gather each one of the sticky notes, tear them up, and put them in the trash. Note cards is another really fun one. Note cards and paper clips. So this is kind of like a child's craft room with this one. Note cards and paper clips. Y'all know the tool of creating a lifespan or a timeline for the client, recreating all the things that have happened over the years. Well, instead of having it in a linear, a lot of my clients are not linear thinkers. So we put each one on one note card. And then we put the note cards on the office floor. And then we begin to connect them with the paper clips as how they happened in life or how they feel like they happened. And then we go back and we rearrange. We unclip them and we put them back in ways that reframe it, that reform it, and that redeem it. So it's another really powerful way of including the client in how do you feel like God is seeing this? And it will really amaze you when you allow God to come into those sessions and connect those seams for you. So, moving on into a few others. Community service. We talk a lot about community service in the Christian world, and community service is a good thing that I feel like can come into Christian counseling. Community service ties into commands in Scripture. It also is a great way to tie into counseling goals. The things that you can see through community service is some specific impact on practicing some of those communication skills or counseling around one's purpose, looking at boundaries or honoring the limits that one has. There's a handout that I have on this that helps the client think through 5 different questions each time they want to bring community service into their sessions. When I was on staff at the church, we allowed clients to actually pay for their sessions if they would do this process, because it is that powerful and it is that impactful. It takes a lot of energy, but it's extremely helpful. One of the things that ties into service is the practice of fasting. When you think about couples counseling, every couple I work with who's a Christian couple, I invite them to fast as we go through our counseling process. Because we look at biblical fasting, and biblical fasting is not about giving up food. Biblical fasting is about putting back God into his proper place. And so fasting is a way of serving that as well. If you need some fasting resources, my current favorites are Jensen Franklin. Jensen Franklin is a pastor in the South, in one of the Carolinas. He also has a church in California as well. And he has some great resources online for fasting, especially for the client who might never have done that before. Again, that's Jensen Franklin. Diary cards. So here at the Timothy Center, y'all know we do DBT. Y'all YouTube, we do DBT and IOP groups. So one of the tools that we use in DBT is called a diary card. I've taken the diary card and reframed it in the process of whole person counseling and the idea of discipleship. So the diary card that I use is a charting exercise where we can look at the 5 areas of intimacy: emotional, physical, intellectual, spiritual, and relational. And then the client can chart these. You can see on the screen there, they can pick different things that they want to chart. What we're doing is we're creating intentionality, we're highlighting purpose, and we're inviting them to take a part in their counseling goals as well. And then they've got days. The process of doing this can be very helpful, especially when you're dealing with a type A or high performer who just wants to check off the box. Because then we can talk about, okay, did you check it off or did you go through the process? So this diary charting exercise is more about the actual place and the actual process of the work. And then looking at some visual graphing. Visual graphing is super fun, especially if you've got some artists or you have some people who like to doodle as you're talking. How many of y'all have used genograms before? Okay, so how many of y'all do faith genograms? Like looking in your genograms is the faith. Okay. So faith genogram, that's another one. This is actually an idea that was suggested to me by one of the pastors I work with at the church. And he simply asked the question, why not track the faith journey of the family? So that's what we did. What's helpful is you can understand the family background. You can also see the place of some trends that might have happened. When we're talking about bringing prayer into here and bringing God image and parent image, this all plays in here when we're thinking about the faith genogram. It also allows us to see some maturity indicators too when we're talking about relational or development. So faith genogram is super helpful with that. And then sociograms. Sociograms are super fun. Y'all, how many of y'all have used sociograms before? Okay, a sociogram is similar to a genogram, except what we're going to look at is the social relationships. A sociogram is that place where we can bring importance back to friendship, importance back to community. So you can identify healthy boundaries for the client and with the client. You can also identify spiritual formation that's happening in and through community. A lot of times we underestimate the pastoral importance of fellowship and community. And I'm not talking about a pastor who's been ordained. I'm talking the pastoral care that happens in a Christian community. And this allows us to be spiritually formed, supported, and shepherded through this. So the sociogram, again, helps the client to see who's with me now, who can I actually ask for help. So that leads us to an action item of who can I call when. It also leads us to an action item of which relationship do I want to start pouring into. Which relationship has a line that might not be a healthy line that I might need to rethink. So a sociogram, again, is another really empowering, activating, and intentional tool that you can use that's visual. So a few quick resources too to help you kind of tie some of these together. One of them is the Enneagram. Yeah. Okay, Enneagram fans, yes, no? So the Enneagram has its pros and cons. It has its fans and its not so fans. But one thing that I do like about the Enneagram is when used in a Christian community, it really ties you back to the gospel. It really ties you back and allows you to see those places where you might not be living the life that God has created you to live. You might be living out of something that is more a weaker self. That could be something that could be developed into a stronger self. So the Enneagram is a really great tool. A lot of amazing resources out there. One of my current favorites is yourenneagramcoach.com with Beth McCord. Thank you, Beth. And one of the things I love about this is that for me, it's helped me to connect better with my husband too. We connect and communicate a lot better now that we learn each other's types. Yeah. Intimacy therapy, I briefly mentioned that. That's one of the models that I used when I was doing my internship. Intimacy therapy has multiple handouts that could be super applicable for you. Thank you, Josh. And then the last two resources to think about, emotionally healthy spirituality. Emotionally healthy spirituality was developed by Peter and Jerry Scazzaro. Awesome Italian name. And Pete and Jerry Scazzaro are pastors in Queens, New York. And emotionally healthy spirituality has the presupposition that you can't be emotionally healthy without having spiritual health. So it is a great dovetail for your work in counseling. There's multiple books, workbooks, and also group studies for this too. And then lastly, some workbooks. I just tagged on a few of my favorites that are in there for you too. And we'll have these in the show notes and in your agenda too. So thinking through this, Christian therapy is a process. And as Christian therapists, we bought into the idea of process. The thing to remember about process is always connected to a person. And that person is Jesus Christ. And as we go through this process, we have this person who is with us. And we have this presence that is always with us in sessions too. So when you think about being a good Christian counselor, one who puts these into practice, these essentials that we've discussed, that brings people through the process that starts inside, helps them discover who they are, and then moves them outward into the presence of God and then into community. That's how God is doing this process of redemption. And honestly, y'all, that is how we are creating and influencing culture too, to come back to the place of the person of Christ. So, now we're bringing it to the questions. Quick questions. It was like a fire hose of a lot of words. And I'm sorry, I think my Yankeeism kind of kicked in and I talked really fast.
I was just curious, like, how you do the different, where you lay out the note cards and stuff like that. I didn't catch.
Yeah, the note cards and how we lay it out. So a lot of times I'll have note cards and I'll actually put them out and we'll get a stack of note cards and we'll get some colored pencils or pens and then we'll get a stack of paper clips. And with the note cards, I'll tell the client, take these home, write out the big events that you could remember in your life and then bring them back. Or they don't even have to be big events. If you're writing these out and something comes to mind, write it down. One event per card, one memory per card. And then when they come into session, what we do is as they tell me about the card, each card, I'll punch a hole in either end of the note card So for example, if this is the note card, I'm going to punch a hole here, I'm going to punch a hole here. And what this does is it gives me the opportunity to create a train of note cards and to connect them. So after they tell me about each one and we punch holes in them, then we set them on the floor. After we get through all of them, then I ask the client, okay, let's go ahead and put these in the place of order or the place of how do you feel like these impact each other? Or let's put them in a place of themes and we'll create columns. Then we'll start to connect them together as how they felt like they happened. And then we'll sit back and we'll look at them, and if the client wants to pray about it, we'll pray. Otherwise, we'll take some deep breaths and we'll just kind of be still for a second. We might stretch or get up and kind of move around the room. And then we'll come back to it and we'll say, okay, let's look at how we connected these. Has God spoken to you about anything about how we connected them? When you look at the connections, do you want to rearrange anything about those in a place now? And then we do that. Yeah. Answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? Alright, so as we wrap up with this, I want to leave you with some thoughts about working together with pastors or churches. Working together with pastors or with churches is an incredible opportunity. And it's really what Timothy said, or what we really believe in, is supporting the local church and building the local church and vice versa. There's going to be Christian counselors who don't believe in counseling. There's going to be Christian pastors and churches who don't believe in counseling either. But those that do, we can all work together. So think through, you got to have the proper procedures of releasing information. What's really cool is you can create a treatment team and you can address any theological questions directly to the pastor. You can have the pastor or faith leader speak into some of the sessions too, with the counselee's approval, of course. And then it also leads you to the bigger picture of how to identify mental health and how it's actually dealt with in the church. So, talked about some questions. Any other questions now?
Well, Liz and I met with a pastor down south a few months ago and stressed that. He actually said, if we send someone to a Christian counselor, often they stop coming to church. Because they send them to an outside resource, and the Christian therapist, this was the assumption he had, doesn't properly stress the importance of staying connected to a faith community. That they kind of start to rely on the counselor or psychology. And so the importance of us really pushing those people back into a faith community is huge. So thinking through ways that we can potentially do a better job of that.
Exactly.
I heard of that. Never thought of that.
Yeah. I was surprised when he said it too.
Yeah. I've heard it a couple of times being in ministry for a while, and it's kind of sad. Our job is to create community, literally. So,
Not be the only persons.
exactly. So here's 2 CTAs for you guys, 2 calls to
You have
action.
1 minute if you have a noon or 1 o'clock.
Which of these possible creative applications do you want to try? And based on your own growth as a counselor, what's the next step you see you might need? So some application thoughts. And then to send you off, I want to just show you this little video. Feel free to check out if it's time for you to go. But this video is one of my faves that I like to play when I need a little something to get me going in the morning. Should I check the volume?
What is the strength of your life? Who shall be afraid? When the wicked, even like the enemies of my foes,
Just like grabbing that one out back there.
my heart shall be fear. The war should rise against me.
Get loud.
In this, I will be confident. I've got a promise. Turning back is not an option. There's a calling on my life, and I'm not about to drop it. I got this. For this I was chosen. The final word over me was spoken before I was born. I have a purpose that goes far beyond what I want, what I feel, what I see, what they say cannot be. With God, all things are possible. And when my desire aligns with the divine, I am unstoppable. In this, I will be confident. Of course the climb is hard. I'm not surprised. The dream is difficult by design to make sure I rely on His might, not mine. His plan, not mine. His hand, not mine. My assignment was conceived in His heart, His mind. And the blessing ahead will always be greater than the battle behind. So this is not the time to compromise or entertain 1,000 lies and a million reasons why I can't, or it won't, or it's not, or I'm never. I've heard it before, so shut up, devil. God didn't say He'd make it easy. He said He'd make me better, make me strong, and give me grace to carry on. No matter what the opposition, I only need one weapon. I have the faith to overcome. In this, I will be confident. I'm too close to quit, and the stakes are too great for me to hesitate. So whatever it costs, whatever it takes, I keep coming. I show up, take the shot with my hands shaking. The fear is real, but it won't break me. God will not fail me, nor forsake me. I'll keep coming. I'll step to the battle like it's already won. Like I got the enemy on the run. I speak and believe like it's already done. In this, I will be confident. He made me a promise. He gave me a calling. I know that He's able to keep me from falling. I focus my hope. My excuses are gone. The moment to prove the power of God is called. He made me a promise. He gave me a calling. I know that He's able to keep me from falling. I focus my hope. The past is gone. The moment to prove the power of God is called. In this, I will be confident. The time is now. The odds are low. The haters are loud. The pressure is on. The devil, you messed with the wrong one. I got my strength. I got my soul. And in the name of my God, I will overcome. In this, I will be confident.
That's all, folks. You can be confident.
Thank you so
Thanks for
much,
joining us
Liz.
today.
Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome. Thanks.
We were having a heck of a time with this video.